The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony of Kepler 442b as Danny Carter kicked the gravity ball high into the air. His sister Lisa laughed and jumped to catch it, her brown hair bouncing as she moved. The ball glowed with a soft blue light as it floated slowly back down in the planet's weak gravity. "Come on, Lisa, throw it harder," Danny shouted, his voice echoing across the empty plaza. Around them, the other kids from the colony gathered in a loose circle. There was Bobby Lane, the mechanic's son with dirt under his fingernails. Amy Foster, only 8 years old, stood on her tiptoes trying to see over the bigger kids. Chris, Park held his little sister's hand while watching the game. The plaza sat between the human living quarters and the tall, crystal buildings where the Zephyrians worked. The aliens looked like walking lizards with purple skin and 4 arms. They moved slowly and spoke in clicking sounds that hurt human ears. Most humans tried to stay away from them, but the kids had grown up here. The Zephyrians were just part of life on the colony. Captain Jake Morrison watched from his office window as the children played. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes. For 3 years he had kept peace between the humans and Zephyrians on this dusty planet. It was not easy work. The aliens followed rules that humans did not understand. The humans wanted freedom that the aliens could not give. "They look happy," said Kate Palmer, walking into his office. She was the colony's civilian administrator, a thin woman with short black hair. "It's good to see kids being kids out there." Jake nodded but did not smile. "As long as they stay away from the Zephyrian quarter. Veltar has been complaining about noise again." Administrator Veltar was the Zephyrian leader on the colony. He was taller than most of his kind, with darker purple skin and gold markings on his arms. The Zephyrians respected him, but the humans found him cold and harsh. He followed every rule exactly and expected others to do the same. Down in the plaza, the gravity ball game was getting more exciting. The kids had spread out further, using the whole open space. Danny threw the ball as hard as he could toward Bobby. The ball sailed through the air, glowing brighter as it spun, but Danny had thrown too hard. The ball flew past Bobby's reaching hands and bounced off the ground. It rolled toward the edge of the plaza, where a beautiful crystal structure stood gleaming in the sunlight. The structure was as tall as a house and made of clear blue crystal that seemed to glow from inside. Carved symbols covered its surface, telling stories in the Zephyrian language. It was their monument to the ancestors, the most sacred thing on the colony. The Zephyrians came here every day to pray and leave offerings. "Oh no!" Lisa shouted as she saw where the ball was going. Danny ran after it, but he was too late. The gravity ball struck the base of the monument with a soft thud. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a thin crack appeared in the crystal, starting where the ball had hit. The crack grew longer. It spread up the monument like a spider web, making tiny singing sounds as it moved. Within seconds, a whole section of the beautiful crystal was covered in broken lines. "We have to get out of here," Bobby whispered, his face pale. But it was too late. 3 Zephyrian guards had already seen what happened. They came running on their 4 legs, their weapons ready. Behind them came Administrator Veltar, his gold markings bright with anger. "What is the meaning of this destruction?" Veltar's voice was like stones grinding together, his 4 eyes fixed on the children who huddled together in fear. Danny stepped forward, his heart pounding. "It was an accident, sir. We were just playing and the ball got away from us. We didn't mean to hurt anything." Veltar walked slowly around the damaged monument. His clawed hands traced the cracks in the crystal. "This sacred structure has stood for 300 years. It holds the spirits of our ancestors, and you have broken it with your careless games." "Please, Mr. Veltar," Lisa said, tears in her eyes. "We're really sorry. Can we help fix it somehow?" "Fix it?" Veltar's laugh was harsh and cold. "You cannot fix what has been destroyed. The spirits of our ancestors have been disturbed. This is a crime against our people." Captain Morrison came running across the plaza with Kate Palmer behind him. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Veltar pointed at the cracked monument. "These human children have desecrated our most sacred site. They must face justice under Zephyrian law." "Now wait a minute," Morrison said, stepping between the alien and the kids. "They're just children. It was clearly an accident. We can discuss compensation or repairs. There can be no repair for what is broken, Veltar replied. And age is no excuse for such destruction. On our world, children learn respect before they learn to walk. More Zephyrians had gathered around the plaza. They clicked and hissed among themselves as they looked at the damaged monument. Some of them seemed angry while others just looked sad. Dr. Alan Price, the colony's medical officer, pushed through the crowd. These children need to go home to their parents. They're scared and this situation is getting out of hand. But Veltar raised one of his 4 hands. By the laws of the Zephyrian Empire, these children are under arrest for destruction of sacred property. They will be transported to the detention facility for processing. You can't be serious, Kate Palmer said. They're kids. The youngest is only 8 years old. The law makes no distinction for age in cases of sacred desecration, Veltar replied. His guards moved closer to the children, who pressed together in terror. Captain Morrison put his hand on his weapon. I won't let you take these children. Then you violate the treaty between our peoples, Veltar said calmly. Article 12 clearly states that crimes against Zephyrian property fall under our jurisdiction. Morrison's jaw tightened. He knew Veltar was right about the treaty. The agreement that allowed humans to mine on this planet gave the Zephyrians control over their own laws and customs, but he had never imagined it would come to this. At least let them say goodbye to their parents, Morrison pleaded. Veltar considered this for a moment. Very well. You have 1 hour to gather their belongings, then they come with us. The news spread through the human quarters like wildfire. Parents came running from all directions. Sam Carter, Danny and Lisa's father, was the first to arrive. He was a big man with strong hands stained from years of mechanical work. You're not taking my children anywhere, he told Veltar. His wife Maria was right behind him, tears streaming down her face. Please, they didn't mean any harm, they're good kids. But the Zephyrian guards would not be moved. One by one, the other parents arrived. Bobby's mother, Linda Moore, who taught at the colony school. Amy Foster's father, Pete Johnson, who worked in the power plant. Chris Park's parents, who ran the colony store. All 15 children who had been playing in the plaza were loaded onto a Zephyrian transport ship. They cried for their parents as the ship lifted off, heading for the detention facility on the planet's cold northern continent. Captain Morrison watched the ship disappear into the gray sky. He had failed to protect the children under his command. Now he had to find a way to get them back before it was too late. As the transport vanished from sight, Morrison walked to his office and began composing an emergency message to Earth. The Yow. Nearest human fleet was 3 months away, but he had to try something. Those children were counting on him. Behind him, the damaged monument caught the fading sunlight, its cracks spreading like tears across the crystal surface. The detention facility on the northern continent of Kepler 442b was a cold gray place built into the side of a mountain. The wind never stopped howling across the barren landscape, and the temperature stayed well below freezing even during the day. It was designed to hold adult Zephyrian criminals, not human children. Danny Carter huddled in the corner of his cell, trying to keep his sister Lisa warm. The walls were made of the same crystal material as Zephyrian buildings, but they gave off no heat. The floor was hard and cold against their bodies. Through the small window, all they could see was endless ice and rock. I'm scared, Danny, Lisa whispered, her teeth chattering. It's going to be okay, Danny said, though he did not believe his own words. Dad will come get us, you'll see. In the cell next to them, little Amy Foster was coughing badly. The 8-year-old had been sick since their second day in the facility. The air was thin and harsh, nothing like the filtered atmosphere in the colony's living quarters. Bobby Lane banged on the cell door, calling for help, but the Zephyrian guards ignored him. She needs medicine, Chris Park shouted through his cell bars. Can't you see she's just a little kid? The guard, a young Zephyrian with silver markings, looked uncomfortable but shook his head. No special treatment. All prisoners are treated the same under facility rules. 3 days had passed since the children were taken from their families. 3 days of cold, thin soup and stale bread. 3 days of sleeping on hard floors with only rough blankets for warmth. 3 days of fear and confusion. But across the galaxy, something extraordinary was happening. On the water world of Altair, Prime Ambassador Kethlin received the emergency transmission from Captain Morrison. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian read the message 3 times before calling an emergency session of the Altarian Council. "Fellow Altarians," Kethlin said to the assembled leaders, "our human allies face a crisis that strikes at the heart of what we hold dear. Children, innocent children, have been imprisoned for what can only be called an accident." The Altarian Council chamber filled with angry clicking sounds. The water-dwelling species had their own young to protect, and the idea of jailing children horrified them. "We must act immediately," declared Councillor Sethra, her gills fluttering with emotion. "Send word to the Zephyrian High Council. Demand these children be released at once." Ambassador Kethlin nodded. "I will contact High Councillor Vexmore personally. This cannot stand." But the Altarians were not alone in their outrage. On the Sadad desert world of Draco 7, General Thakmor of the Draconian hegemony studied the same report. The massive reptilian warrior was known throughout the galaxy for his fierce military discipline, but even he had limits. "This is madness," Thakmor growled to his staff officers. "In all my years of war, I have never seen such cruelty toward younglings. The Zephyrians have gone too far. The Draconians valued strength above all else, but they also believed in protecting those who could not protect themselves. To them, harming children was the act of cowards." "General," asked Colonel Hackstar, "what are your orders?" "Prepare a formal protest to the Zephyrian Empire, and ready the Third Fleet for departure. If they will not listen to reason, perhaps they will listen to force." The news traveled faster than any ship through the galaxy's quantum communication network. On the ice world of Kepler-22, the insectoid hive mind processed the information with the speed of 1,000,000 connected thoughts. The Queen Mother's voice echoed through the collective consciousness. "Children are the future of all species. To harm them is to harm tomorrow itself. We cannot allow this to continue." Within hours, the hive mind announced that all trade with the Zephyrian Empire would cease until the human children were freed. Cargo ships carrying vital supplies to Zephyrian worlds turned around mid-flight. Mining contracts worth billions of credits were cancelled, with a single transmitted thought. Even more surprising was the reaction from the crystalline beings of Vega Prime. These ancient creatures rarely involved themselves in the affairs of organic life, but something about the imprisonment of children moved them to action. "We have existed for 10,000 years. Spoke Elder Crystal Zarnath through quantum resonance. "In all that time we have learned one truth above all others. The young must be cherished and protected no matter their species. The Zephyrians have forgotten this wisdom." The most unexpected response came from the artificial intelligences of the Andromedan Syndicate. These machine minds typically viewed organic conflicts with cold logic, but their analysis of the situation reached a clear conclusion. "Processing complete," announced Central AI Node 7. "The imprisonment of developing minds violates 347 galactic ethical protocols. This action is statistically certain to cause long-term psychological damage to the subjects. The Zephyrian Empire's actions are illogical and harmful." The AIs began their own form of protest, refusing to process any communications or data transfers involving Zephyrian systems. Space traffic control networks suddenly developed glitches that delayed Zephyrian ships. Banking systems experienced errors that froze Zephyrian accounts. Back on Kepler 442b, Captain Morrison worked around the clock trying to coordinate rescue efforts. The human fleet was still 2.5 months away, but allies were offering help from all directions. "Sir," said Communications Officer Gary Stone, "we're getting messages from dozens of species. The Cetacean Collective is sending medical ships. The Altarians are demanding diplomatic meetings. Even the Draconians are mobilizing their fleet." Morrison rubbed his tired eyes. "Any word from the Zephyrian High Council?" "Nothing, sir." Complete silence. In the colony's main meeting hall, the parents held their own emergency session. Sam Carter stood at the front of the room, his face haggard from 3 sleepless nights. "They took our children," he said. his voice breaking. My Danny and Lisa are sitting in some frozen prison right now, and for what? For playing a game? For being kids? Maria Carter wiped tears from her eyes. We have to do something. We can't just wait for help to arrive. Pete Johnson, Amy's father, slammed his fist on the table. That little girl is sick. I can hear it in her cough on the video transmissions. She needs proper medical care, not some alien prison. Dr. Alan Price stood up slowly. I've been thinking about this. What if we demanded humanitarian access? Even under their laws, they have to provide medical care for prisoners. They've refused every request so far, said Linda Moore, Bobby's mother and the colony's head teacher. These aliens don't seem to understand that children are different from adults. Maybe that's the problem, said Kate Palmer. Maybe we need to explain it to them in terms they can understand. But outside the meeting hall, Zephyrian guards watched and listened. Administrator Veltar had ordered increased security around the human quarters. He would not allow any rescue attempts to interfere with Zephyrian justice. In his office, Veltar received his own communications from across the galaxy. Angry messages from the Altarians, threats from the Draconians, economic sanctions from the hive mind, trade disruptions from the AIs. High Counselor Vexmore will not be pleased, said his aide, a younger Zephyrian named Kildash. The entire galaxy seems to be turning against us. Veltar's 4 eyes glowed with anger. Let them rage. We follow our laws, not the opinions of other species. These human children violated our most sacred site. They must face the consequences. But even as he spoke those words, Veltar could see the economic reports coming in. Ships turning away from Zephyrian ports, contracts being canceled, trade routes closing down. The imprisonment of 15 human children was costing his empire billions of credits every day. Sir, Kildash said carefully, perhaps we should consider the diplomatic consequences of our actions. We consider nothing, Veltar snapped. Justice must be served regardless of the cost. Meanwhile, in the detention facility, the children's situation grew worse by the hour. Amy Foster's cough had turned into a fever. She lay on her cell floor, shivering despite the rough blankets the other children had given her. Please, Danny called to the guards. She's really sick. She needs help. The silver-marked guard looked at the small girl with something that might have been concern. But orders were orders. No special treatment for prisoners, regardless of age or condition. As night fell over the frozen landscape, 15 human children lay in their cold cells, unaware that their imprisonment had sparked the biggest diplomatic crisis the galaxy had seen in centuries. They only knew they were scared, cold, and far from home. But help was coming. Across the stars, fleets were moving, governments were meeting, and an entire galaxy was learning a simple truth that humans had always known. Nobody hurts children and gets away with it. Nova Sterling had been investigating corruption in the outer colonies for 3 years. As the top reporter for the Galactic News Network, she had uncovered smuggling rings, illegal mining operations, and crooked politicians across a dozen star systems. But the story of the imprisoned human children was different. This story made her angry. She sat in her small ship, the Starseeker, reviewing the official Zephyrian reports about the monument incident. Something did not add up. The reports claimed the children had caused massive damage to a structure that had stood for 300 years. But Nova had seen the footage from the colony's security cameras. A simple gravity ball could not have caused that much damage. Computer, show me the geological surveys for Kepler 442b, she said. The screen filled with technical data and soil composition charts. Nova was not a scientist, but she had learned to read these reports during her years of investigating mining colonies. What she saw made her sit up straight. Well, she muttered. This is very interesting. The geological survey from 6 months ago showed clear warning signs. The ground beneath the Zephyrian monument was unstable. Underground water had been slowly washing away the soil, creating hollow spaces beneath the crystal structure. Any sudden vibration could have triggered a collapse. Nova compared the survey to the official incident report. The Zephyrian authorities had completely ignored their own scientists' warnings. They had known the monument was in danger, but they had done nothing to fix it. Computer, search for all communications between Zephyrian officials regarding monument stability. Search complete. No official communications found. That's strange. Try searching classified databases. Nova's ship had special access codes that allowed her to investigate government files across the galaxy. It was how she had exposed so many corrupt officials in the past. But accessing Zephyrian classified files would be risky. Her computer beeped. Warning: accessing classified Zephyrian files may result in criminal charges. Do it anyway, Nova said. The files that appeared on her screen made her gasp. Internal messages between Zephyrian officials showed they had known about the monument's instability for months. Dr. Helen Cross, the human colony's chief scientist, had sent multiple warnings to Administrator Veltar about underground erosion. But there was more. Nova found communications between Veltar and the Zephyrian High Council from just 2 days before the children's arrest. The messages revealed a plan to use any incident at the colony as an excuse to renegotiate the mining treaty. "We need greater control over the valuable mineral deposits," one message read. "The humans are extracting resources too efficiently. We must find a way to limit their operations." Another message was even more damning. "Any violation of colony rules should be used to pressure the humans into accepting new terms. We cannot allow them to continue their current level of extraction." Nova Sterling stared at the screen in disbelief. The Zephyrians had not just ignored the danger to their monument. They had planned to use any accident as political leverage. Those 15 human children were not criminals. They were victims of a calculated scheme. She immediately transmitted copies of all the files to news networks across the galaxy. Within hours, every major news outlet was broadcasting the shocking truth about the monument incident. On the water world of Altair Prime, Ambassador Cathlon watched the news reports with growing fury. The blue-skinned diplomat had spent days trying to negotiate with the Zephyrian High Council through proper channels. Now he learned that the entire crisis was based on lies. "Summon the Zephyrian ambassador immediately," he ordered his staff, "and prepare a formal accusation of treaty violation." When Ambassador Kelvon arrived at the Altarian embassy, his purple skin had turned pale with fear. The normally confident Zephyrian official looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. "Ambassador Kelvon," Kethlin said coldly, "your people have deceived the entire galaxy. These children are innocent victims of your government's political games." I was not aware of these internal communications," Kelvon stammered. "This is the first I have heard of any cover-up." "Ignorance is no excuse," Kethlon replied. "Your empire has committed fraud on a galactic scale. Those children must be released immediately, or the Altarian Federation will consider this an act of war." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Draco 7, General Thakmor called an emergency meeting of the Draconian High Command. The massive reptilian warriors listened in silence as their leader read from Nova Sterling's report. "They use children as political pawns," Thakmor growled. "This is beyond mere cruelty. This is dishonor of the highest order." The Draconian concept of honor was sacred to their culture. To use innocent young ones for political gain violated everything they believed in. Within hours, the Third Fleet was moving towards Zephyrian space with orders to ensure the children's immediate release. The insectoid hive mind of Kepler-22 processed the new information with the cold efficiency of 1 billion connected thoughts. Their decision was swift and final. "The Zephyrian Empire has violated the fundamental principles of civilized behavior," the Queen Mother announced. "All trade agreements are permanently cancelled. All diplomatic relations are severed. They are outcasts until these wrongs are corrected." Even the artificial intelligences of the Andromedan Syndicate showed something resembling emotion in their response. Central AI Node 7 transmitted a message that reached every computer system in the galaxy. "The Zephyrian Empire has demonstrated systematic deception and child endangerment. These actions violate 723 galactic ethical protocols. Economic and communications sanctions will continue until full compliance is achieved." Back on Kepler 442b, Captain Morrison received Nova Sterling's report just as protests erupted throughout the human quarters. Sam Carter led a group of angry parents toward the Zephyrian Administrative Center, but Morrison intercepted them before violence could break out. "I know you're angry," Morrison told the crowd. "I'm angry too, but fighting will only make things worse for our children." "They lied to us," Sam Carter shouted. "They knew that monument was going to fall down, and they let our kids take the blame." Maria Carter pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. "My babies are freezing in that prison for something they didn't even do. How is that justice?" Dr. Alan Price stepped forward with his medical scanner in hand. "Captain, I've been monitoring the children's vital signs through the prison's security feed. Amy Foster's condition is getting worse. She needs immediate medical attention." Morrison looked at the faces around him. These parents had trusted him to keep their families safe, and he had failed them. But now he had the evidence he needed to fight back. "Get me a direct line to the Zephyrian High Council," he ordered. "It's time they answered for what they've done." Meanwhile, in the detention facility, the children's situation had become desperate. Amy Foster lay unconscious in her cell, her breathing shallow and labored. Danny Carter had given up trying to get the guards' attention. They either could not understand or did not care that a little girl was dying. "She's not moving," Lisa whispered, pressing her face against the bars that separated her cell from Amy's. Bobby Lane kicked at his cell door in frustration. "This is crazy. She's just a kid. How can they just watch her get sicker and do nothing?" The silver-marked guard, whose name was Keltar, stood at the end of the corridor, watching the human children with growing unease. He was young for a Zephyrian, barely past his coming-of-age ceremony. He had joined the prison service to serve justice, not to watch children suffer. His communicator buzzed with an incoming message. It was from his clutchmate, who worked at the communication center in the capital city. The message contained Nova Sterling's report and the shocking revelation about the monument incident. Keltar read the message 3 times before the truth finally sank in. These children were innocent. They had been imprisoned based on lies and political manipulation. And now one of them was dying while he stood by and did nothing. He looked down the corridor at the small human girl lying motionless in her cell. His orders were clear: no special treatment for prisoners, but his conscience was clearer. Some orders were wrong. Keltar made his decision. He activated his emergency medical beacon and called for a transport to the colony's medical facility. Then he opened Amy Foster's cell door and gently lifted the unconscious child in his forearms. "What are you doing?" called his superior, Guard Captain Nexrel, as he ran toward them. "What should have been done days ago," Keltar replied. "I am saving a child's life." As Keltar carried Amy toward the medical transport, the other children watched through their cell bars with hope for the first time in days. Maybe, just maybe, someone still cared about doing what was right. But the real battle was just beginning. Across the galaxy, fleets were moving. Governments were mobilizing, and an entire civilization was learning that some things were more important than politics or pride. The children of Kepler 442b had become symbols of innocence in a corrupt universe, and the universe was finally ready to fight for them. The medical transport carrying Amy Foster raced through the frozen sky toward the colony's medical center. Guard Keltar held the unconscious girl carefully in his forearms, watching her pale face as the ship's heater slowly warmed her small body. Behind them, the detention facility grew smaller in the distance. "Colony Medical Center, this is Emergency Transport 7, the pilot called over the radio. "We have a critical patient incoming. Human child, age 8, severe respiratory distress and hypothermia." Dr. Alan Price was waiting on the landing pad when the transport touched down. He had been monitoring Amy's condition through the security feeds for days, watching helplessly as she grew sicker. Now he finally had a chance to help her. "Get her to the emergency room immediately," he ordered, taking Amy from Keltar's arms. The Zephyrian guard followed them inside, ignoring the angry stares from human colonists who recognized his uniform. "You're the guard who brought her here," said Nurse Betty Stone, as she helped prepare the medical equipment. "Why did you risk your job to save her?" Keltar looked down at the small girl on the medical table. "Because it was the right thing to do. She is just a child. She should never have been in that place. Dr. Price worked quickly to stabilize Amy's breathing while Betty checked her temperature. The girl's body was dangerously cold, and her lungs were filled with fluid from the harsh prison atmosphere. "Is she going to be okay?" Keltar asked quietly. "I think so," Dr. Price replied. "You got her here just in time. Another few hours and we might have lost her." Word of Amy's rescue spread quickly through the colony. Parents who had been holding vigil outside the Zephyrian Administrative Center rushed to the medical center to see if their own children might be freed next. But Administrator Veltar was not ready to give up. "Guard Keltar is under arrest for violation of detention protocols," Veltar announced over the colony's communication system. "The prisoner will be returned to the facility immediately." Captain Morrison stepped in front of the medical center doors as Zephyrian security forces approached. "This child stays here. She's under medical care and will not be moved. You cannot interfere with Zephyrian justice," Veltar's lieutenant said, raising his weapon. "Your justice is a lie," Morrison replied, holding up a copy of Nova Sterling's report. "The whole galaxy knows what you really did. Those children are innocent, and everyone knows it now." At that moment, the sky above the colony began to fill with ships. First came the sleek blue vessels of the Altarian Federation, their hulls gleaming like water in the sunlight. Behind them appeared the massive gray warships of the Draconian Third Fleet, bristling with weapons and armor. Admiral Frank Cooper's human relief fleet had finally arrived, 3 weeks ahead of schedule thanks to navigational help from their new alien allies. The HMS Defiant led a formation of 12 human warships, while medical ships from the Cetacean Collective brought doctors and healing equipment. Even the mysterious crystalline entities of Vega Prime had sent a ship, its geometric hull sparkling with inner light. The artificial intelligences of the Andromedan Syndicate were represented by a sleek black vessel that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. General Thakmore's voice boomed across the colony's communication channels. "Administrator Veltar, by order of the Galactic Coalition for Child Protection, you will release all detained human children immediately. Any resistance will be met with force." Veltar watched the fleet formations from his office window with growing panic. What had started as a simple matter of colonial law enforcement had become a galactic crisis. His own government was facing economic collapse as trade routes shut down and diplomatic relations crumbled. His communication console chimed with an incoming message from the Zephyrian capital. The face of High Counselor Vexmore appeared on the screen, but he looked older and more tired than Veltar had ever seen him. "Veltar," the High Counselor said slowly, "you are relieved of command. Counselor Zethara is assuming control of the colony. The children are to be released immediately." "But, sir," Veltar protested, "our laws demand justice for the destruction of sacred property." "Our laws also demand honesty and honor," Vexmore replied, "neither of which you have shown in this matter. The monument was damaged by our own negligence, not by children's games. You knew this, and chose to hide the truth." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. His career was over, his reputation destroyed, all because he had chosen politics over truth. Counselor Zethara arrived within the hour aboard a Zephyrian diplomatic ship. She was older than Veltar, with silver markings that showed her high rank. Unlike her predecessor, she came not with guards, but with doctors and interpreters. "Captain Morrison," she said in carefully practiced English, "I come to make amends for the terrible wrong done to your children. They will be freed immediately and given full medical care." The rescue operation that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from a dozen different species worked together to transport the children from the frozen detention facility back to the colony. Altarian medical teams treated their injuries while Cetacean psychologists helped them deal with their trauma. Danny Carter was the first to step off the rescue ship, holding his sister Lisa's hand tightly. Their father Sam was waiting for them, tears streaming down his weathered face as he pulled them into his arms. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have protected you better." "It's okay, Dad," Danny said. though his voice shook with emotion. "We knew you'd come for us." One by one, the other children were reunited with their families. Bobby Lane ran to his mother Linda's arms. Chris Park hugged his parents while his little sister cried with joy. Tony Bell, who had grown thin and pale during his imprisonment, managed a weak smile when he saw his father waiting for him. The last to arrive was Amy Foster, carried carefully by Dr. Price from the medical transport. Her father Pete took her gently, holding her close as she slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. "She's going to be fine," Dr. Price assured him. "She's a strong little girl. They all are." Guard Keltar watched the reunions from a distance, standing alone near the landing pad. He had been officially discharged from the Zephyrian security forces for his act of rebellion, but he felt no regret. Some things were more important than following orders. Counselor Zathara approached him with respect. "You did the right thing, Keltar. Your actions saved a life and helped reveal the truth. That takes real courage." "I only did what anyone should have done," Keltar replied. "Those children never deserved to be in that place." Over the following days, the colony became the center of galactic attention. Diplomats from dozens of species arrived to witness the signing of the new Kepler Accords, which established universal protections for children across all member worlds. Damaged Monument was rebuilt as a joint project between humans and Zephyrians. The new structure was stronger than before, built on solid ground with contributions from every species in the galaxy. Its base was inscribed with a simple message, in hundreds of languages. "Here, children of all species learn that the young of any race are precious to all." Captain Morrison was promoted to colonial governor, while Dr. Price established the first interspecies pediatric medical center. The children, led by Danny Carter, became unofficial ambassadors, their courage and resilience inspiring protective instincts across the galaxy. But perhaps the most important change was in how different species saw each other. The crisis had revealed that despite their different appearances and cultures, all civilized beings shared one fundamental truth: children must be protected. 6 months later, Amy Foster stood in the rebuilt plaza, laughing as she played gravity ball with her friends. The game had new rules now, designed to be safer, but the joy was the same. Around the edges of the plaza, children from a dozen different species watched and learned, waiting for their turn to join in. The monument gleamed in the afternoon sun, its crystal surface unmarked by cracks. At its base, flowers from dozens of worlds grew in a garden tended by children of all species. It was a symbol of unity born from tragedy, of hope rising from injustice, and in the colony's administrative center, a new flag flew alongside the human and Zephyrian banners. It showed the combined symbols of all the species who had united to protect 15 human children. It was the flag of the Galactic Coalition for Child Protection, and it would never be lowered as long as children needed defending. The galaxy had learned that some things transcend politics, law, and even species. The safety of children was one of those things, and anyone who threatened that safety would face not just one angry parent or one protective species, but an entire universe united in their defense. The children of Kepler 442b had taught the galaxy what it meant to be truly civilized, and the galaxy would never forget that lesson.